Hello, everyone. First, I need a motion to call this meeting to order. Mr. Westbrook and Ms. Kaplan, thank you. Next, we officially always start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I need a motion to review the minutes for approval from our December meeting. Mr. Piscatelli and Ms. Kaplan, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the reports from all of our subcommittees. So I think we can start with our communication subcommittee first, maybe.
I'll kick it off, but I see Felicia's here and Tara's here. We met last week, and I think like a lot of the subcommittees, we were talking about what we observed in the climate and culture survey data that we spent some time over the break kind of reading through and such. Kind of three big things came out, and maybe there's more because I should have looked more closely at my notes, but we had a conversation about the message of helping people understand what DEI is and what it isn't. There was one comment that kind of drove a lot of our conversation that came from a young man in the high school, a white boy, who said he feels left out from our DEI efforts. And so that launched us into a conversation about how do we get the message that DEI is about everyone, each and every student in the district. So we talked about maybe shining some more light on that part of our website where that is highlighted. And we also talked about trying to enhance participation in things like the anti-hate rally, because we don't necessarily see, a broad spectrum of students there. It's often a lot of our students who do feel marginalized. So how would we work on that? And then we also talked about the theme of bullying that ran through a lot of our data. And are there some ways we can send out some resources to parents to help them understand what bullying is, maybe some strategies to give their children, and so on. So I'll stop there and see if anyone else on the committee has more to add.
Cassie brought up an idea of somehow incorporating sources of strength.
Yeah.
And so we thought that would be a really good option too, just to bring more people into like these different kinds of groups. I'm sure she could talk more about it because I don't really know a lot about sources. I didn't even know what SOS was. She had explained to me what it was. But I thought that was a really good idea, just about trying to broaden the audiences of these groups that we have supporting people.
Mike P., can I put you on the spot to maybe give the short story of what Sources of Strength is all about? Because there may be other folks on the call who aren't familiar.
Yeah, for sure. So Sources of Strength, we started it, I want to say it was pre-COVID. So I want to say it's been at least 6 or 7 years that we've been doing it. Sources of Strength started off as basically an anti-suicide program. And basically the point of it is it's a strength builder concept. So if you think of the wheel of the Sources of Strength, it highlights different areas where anybody should be able to identify at least something that they can rely on if they're going through a tough time. It could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be healthcare, it could be a lot of different, it could be religion, or activities, healthy activities that you're engaged in. They're all different pie slices of the circle. But what we've used the program for over the years is not just about suicide awareness and prevention, but more about how do we use it as a culture building organization within the building. And now Sources of Strength is now at the middle school as well. And it's a very active club. We have a lot of peer leaders. I think it's 100 and something like 100 peer leaders in the high school. And they have adult mentors that are involved. Anne-Marie Holmes leads the program, and she's done a wonderful job. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So throughout the year, we do different activities, a lot of times in homerooms, usually focused on one of the pie slices in the so.
So the idea is, do you know offhand or a ballpark, Mike, like the percentage of our high school students who are directly connected with some element of it?
Directly. So like I said, I'd say it's about 100 students. So you figure it's what, 1/16 of our population. But they do activities, like I said, through homeroom and during lunch that kind of impact all.
Okay.
So.
All right. I think that is everything from communications.
Thank you. Next is the Community Engagement Subcommittee.
Hi, so Tamika Collado Robinson here, and I'll be doing the report out for community engagement. We had a very small group last week, and so really just continued our discussion with regards to the action item from the December group meeting, and we really started to dig in on some of the activities goals. So in December, we spoke about some action items with regards to the climate survey on how we could create an inclusivity project, because that seemed to be the current theme, that students weren't feeling included with regards to communication and engaging with other students. And so how can we do this in a very, I would say, collaborative way so that students start to feel really engaged and connected to one another? And so we started to discuss some of the strategies on a video project, right? So with the goals to build a community within the schools where students can connect and feel comfortable engaging with each other, both inside and outside of the classroom, recognizing each other, their strengths, their fears, some policy updates, did you know sessions, things of that nature. And then having it be an overall collaboration, so possibly working on the project within the Student Voice subcommittee, since they were already trying to come up with a similar video centered around inclusion, as well as we've discussed details, right? So what goes into creating like video vignettes is timing, right? So maximum 3-minute videos that they could show during morning, homeroom sessions to keep students engaged. Outreach through Student Square could be used. Students can sign up to share their experiences through the video. Promotion. So how do you promote such a concept? How do you promote engagement in creating a video or participating? And some promotion ideas were brought up, using homeroom as kind of like just having like a promotional flyer to be shown by the teachers, as well as the other platforms that are available to the students, as well as making sure that there are release forms, present and available for students when they do come to create a small 30-second video, being flexible when gathering the content, working together. Creating the script to give students directions, information before interviewing them. So, tell us what makes you unique, or, you want to, stick to these three categories, right? And so providing some direction, and then using a quiet place to film the video. So such as school library classroom, I believe that's what they have available to them. And so we really talked about, I wanted them to really just focus on the strategy of building out this community engagement activity. So taking the feedback that was observed in the climate survey and really starting to make a small difference through small videos, 30 seconds, which can make a big impact ultimately throughout the schools. And I do have representation from the high school and middle school, and this was something that they were really excited about and felt it was doable if they collaborate with other students and teachers. So. That was it.
Great, thank you. Next is the research subcommittee.
Hi, the research subcommittee met on the same night, of course, and we discussed the culture and climate survey results. There were two of us at the meeting, myself and Anise, and we had a really good discussion. We ran across a bunch of issues. What we did was make a common document where people could put their responses to the data and highlight some of the issues that they saw there. And we sort of read through some of our responses. And we came to a conclusion, and Anise, you can add to this if you want, but mainly that we probably should be prioritizing our students and getting them more engaged in these conversations. And largely because we feel like the students have a sense of urgency, and a lot of the things that we're talking about, they're the main beneficiaries of it, and their needs are pretty much driving why we do this work. I think that the greater community, by looking at the data, was largely conflicted on either extreme, and that atmosphere has provided almost a reluctance for faculty to want to deal with some of these issues in public forums for fear of some of that conflict, being a victim of some of that conflict, so the students seem to be where we can make the most headway, and we look to really see what we could do to get the students more involved. So Anise, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, that was great. I think, just to add to what you said, also focusing on the students, centering the students, like you said there. I think that also they are the group that will have the most kind of long-term impact from our work if we focus there. And they're, being the student body, they're kind of their family's representative too in the school. They are who spends the most time. It's the school environment that we're really able to affect, and from that focus, hopefully the work radiates out into the community through the students going home, and just where they touch in the community, and also having a better understanding and more appreciation for diversity, equity, and inclusion as they go out into the world, into careers, go to college. It's going to be really important that the students take that with them. So yeah, the students being the center seemed like the most impactful way to approach the work.
Okay, so finally we have the student voice subcommittee, and I think, I'm not really sure, but today I think was supposed to be our scheduled meeting time for January, but the high school team did not meet today. I don't know about the middle school.
The middle school team did meet. Leah's sort of juggling a few different things right now, so I'm sure she can report out on that. The high school meeting was moved to next week because the first Wednesday was a holiday, so we wanted to move it one more week to make sure we can get full participation from everyone. I will say about the Student Voice Committee in the high school, what we're looking to do next is to develop specific programs and priorities that we're going to work on for the rest of the year. And so we're going to be pulling in some of our trusted allies and administrators to help facilitate that, to help us with the planning, and to help students figure out the time commitment that would be necessary to pull off some of the things that we want to do, but also look about the feasibility of these things by talking to and being guided by some of the administrators that the students have identified as people that they know and want to work with.
Derek, is one of those activities the anti-hate rally? I'm just thinking about the conversation we had in our subcommittee. Is that in the works for later in the year?
Yes, there's a lot of student voice committees, with the same name, Elevating Student Voices Program, Student Voice. There's a student voice committee that is working on that. Chloe Tyson is heading up that committee along with a couple of other students, and they are working on that project, as well as doing some visitation to the elementary schools to do some work with the students at that level as well. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that was like the reports from all of the subcommittees. Does anybody have any additional comments or concerns or anything anyone wants to add? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the DI in Action segment.
Yes, that's me again. Since we last talked, Leah has been very busy, so she's been running around to the schools. She attended the Alliance Club meeting, and she connected the club with an author who will be coming in March for a virtual Google Meet meeting, and they'll be discussing her latest book, which is called Roses in the Mouth of a Lion. It's about what it means to be a Muslim and queer in a Pakistani American community. Also, Leah nominated senior Chloe Tyson, who we just referred to, for Siena College's Courage Award, and I believe she had won that award. So she's will be one of the recipients that will be honored in February. We also attended Leah attended the Altamont Equity Committee team meeting in January, and we both met with Power School. Power School obviously is a student data platform that is used, but we're meeting with them to discuss MTSS and some of the ways that how technology can be leveraged to deal with student issues. MTSS is a multi-tier student support system. It's by and large a means that is growing. It's being piloted throughout the state in over 72 districts, and we're looking at the feasibility of when the winds blow and MTSS does become implemented. How can we leverage technology to make sure that we're getting all of the data in the same place, and would it be something that'd be useful for our district? So they wanted to have some discussions with us to talk about some of the equity concerns and some of the DEI issues that arise with that, and then we'll be sharing it, that report out with others. Leah also secured an author, Joshua Levy, for the middle school that will be coming on Read Aloud Day in February 5th. And she'll be in Felicia's class. I saw Felicia's picture pop up earlier, but she'll be coming to her class as well. A lot of authors will be coming for Read Aloud Day. And Leah and I also met with Roberto German, co-founder and executive director of the Multicultural Classroom, to discuss a possible program with them. He does poetry, and his wife is actually is responsible for textured teaching pedagogy, and they would bring some definite abilities to bring to leverage with our students and with our faculty. in the district. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can incorporate them or use them to spread the DEI message. Earlier this month, Leah and I co-facilitated along with Tish Barnett from Niskayuna, the Chief Equity Officer in Niskayuna, Global Majority Affinity Group session at the Capital Region BOCES. I will say that one of the highlights that came out of that affinity program is that a lot of people were focused on self-care, and really talking about needing space to deal with some of the things that they are struggling with, the microaggressions, the different types of struggles that they have in the workplace, and they're looking for spaces to really have a cathartic release of those things and looking for strategies to use to promote their wellness. So although we're focusing sometimes on students and what their needs are and the impact of DEI on them, it's important to note that many of our faculty and administrators of color are dealing with a number of different things as well, and they need to find time for self-care and to be able to adjust to some of the issues that they face on a regular basis as well. And lastly, Leah joined the Feminist Club and is working with a project with the Women and Gender Studies Project Coordinator, who is also from Nassau Community College. And on Friday, our students from the middle school and the high school will be attending the STOP conference at Siena College. And this year's topic is the impact of the civil rights movement on the disability rights movement. So it should be a very interesting day. 25 of our students are going, and I think we have about 4 or 5 chaperones who will be coming along with us. And it should be a good night, a good morning, I should say. Wow, but that's it for DEI in action. Back to you, Ria.
Great, thank you. And now I think we can move on to our learning component, which I think Dr. Wiles is taking up for this meeting.
I am. Before I do that, I just want to let the group know that we do have some additional DEI action work coming up later at the end of this month. We'll be having our kind of mid-year, bring all of our 7 buildings equity teams together in the LGI for a evening or late afternoon, early evening meeting to do some work on their plans, to share what they're working on, so we have cohesion across the building and generate some new ideas. So that's coming up at the end of the month, and I know there's plans getting put together right now for our Superintendent Conference Day in March, and there's always a DEI strand through all of that. So in addition to looking at what we have done, I wanted to just foreshadow what's coming. There's always something more coming. Okay, so I'm going to transition over to our learning component today, and I want to give Ria props here because on our steering committee meeting last week, we always talk about, well, what will be our focus for this component, this part of our meeting, and she pointed out rightfully that, you know, over the last several weeks we've talked, or months, we've talked about some pretty difficult kinds of topics, you know, around climate and culture and you know, all some of the things that we're struggling with. And she says, I think it's the new year, we should think about positive kinds of things. And she is the one who made the recommendation to these 2 articles we shared in the agenda about what makes an inclusive leader. They're both from the Harvard Business Review. So, you know, clearly they are well-vetted resources. So hopefully you had a chance to give them a read. They were a fairly quick read. And so the article that is what makes the key to inclusive leadership, it starts out, it says, what makes people feel included in organizations, feel that they are treated fairly and respectfully, are valued and belong. Many things, of course, including an organization's mission, policies, and practices, as well as coworker behaviors. But mostly, it comes down to leaders. We find that what leaders say and do make up 70% of the difference as to whether an individual reports feeling included. So what we're going to spend, the next little bit of time on is talking about these leadership qualities and characteristics that are in here. But I want to frame it with a very broad definition of what a leader is. There are formal leaders within organizations, but there are leaders throughout organizations. For example, I think everybody on this call, everyone on this committee is a leader. Everyone who steps up to take on a project or create something new is a leader. So I just want to frame that so we're not just talking about people with formal leadership titles, although that certainly applies as well. So with all of that as kind of a preamble, I'm curious, as you read these two articles, were there anything, what things stood out to you? Was there anything that surprised you? Go ahead, Nina. And thank you for the quick hand. I thought, I hope I hope everyone wants to
You know you can count on me, Dr. Wiles.
Thank you, Nina. You are a leader.
Oh, likewise. So, wow, there was so much. And first of all, Ria, wonderful selection. Thank you for leading this. This was beautiful. I just want to say there was so much here that I really took from it. I think the importance of it, if I could say, is the importance of being a good listener and being humble and open to others and not feeling that as a leader that means to be dictating how things are going to go, and more open to that. And I think it really speaks to shared decision making. And Dr. Wiles, I think it's perfect that you led with the added on piece of the end of the month with all of the district working together. So I feel like that was very important. And then I think that it also brings in the fact that the collaborative aspect of it. So I know that, and I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the research committee meeting because I had a conflict that night. And I'm looking at some of the notes that were taken, and it looks like one piece that people voiced in the climate survey was the importance of collaborative culture in the district. And I feel that that's true no matter where you work. I feel like, and where you go to school, wherever it is, I think that people tend to feel that way. I think it's a pretty common sentiment to feel that your needs aren't heard or that, seen. So I think that to me, I think that this reading, both of them really touched on the importance of, to be inclusive means to listen and to try to connect in a collaborative sense.
Right. Thanks, Nina. So I'm noticing that my battery is getting dangerously low. So when you see me turn around, it's not because I'm not listening. It's because I'm plugging in my computer. So thanks, Nina. Who else noted something of note in one or the other of the articles? Go ahead, Shreya.
For me, something that was interesting was, I think it was in the first article, it talked about the awareness of bias. And I think this is really important because when you look at someone, you start to make certain assumptions about them unintentionally. Even though you think that you have an open mind, there's certain things that you think about them or assume about them that you aren't even aware of, which can really cloud your judgment, and it can make you think about the person in a certain way, which can affect the way you work with them and the way you think about them. And I think that's really important to just I'm not really sure how you can find your biases about a certain person because you aren't even aware of them. So I think it's important to kind of keep your mind open and think about what you can assume about a person and what the things you don't know about a person in order to kind of avoid that, I guess. I'm not really sure how to word that, but that was something I found interesting.
I think you worded it perfectly. And, I think everybody struggles with that. We jump to conclusions sometimes to go back to Nina's comment, about before we really listen to what is being said. So excellent point. Thank you, Shreya. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Emma.
I think in both articles, one of the common threads was empathy and being authentic to your staff members or whoever you are a leader to. I find that when a leader is very empathetic and willing to listen and being open to what I'm saying and actually showing careness, but also trying to relate, it really helps me form a relationship with the leader and feel like it's a collaborative relationship rather than just one way. But I think that sense of empathy is very significant in our DEI work, as well as a characteristic that we should look for in leaders and that leaders do have.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Thanks. That's a great point. I sometimes have heard leaders voice worry that if they appear too empathetic or too sympathetic or too vulnerable, that they will be judged as being weak. And I have a colleague who I won't name, works in another district, who has said, please don't mistake my kindness for weakness. And that sticks with me a lot. I just wonder if others of you have any thoughts on that idea. Tamika.
Yeah, I was going to raise that point too. That was something that really stuck out to me in one of the articles, is being open to constructive criticism, right? And so that goes both ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're being harsh and someone is telling you, but also that maybe you need to grow some tough skin because we're walking into a very unknown environment, or something that may require us to take a deep breath, right? And which is often the case, I'm pretty sure, for most of you day to day walking into a school environment, is you have to have thick skin and you have to be able to listen, because at the same time you're growing as educators. We're all growing, in the space that I work in the public health field, working in, across various healthcare sectors and with all kinds of staff. We're exposed to so much. I would say daily nuances, right? Some are critical, some are sad, some are, pressing, but we also have to think of conducting ourselves as well as our work, any policy that we implement with an equitable lens, right? And walking in the shadow of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we are working across all populations, right? And so I may not know everything about a specific culture or a specific practice or a specific, custom. If I'm walking into a Hasidic Jewish community and I need to know, when not to approach on a specific subject or matter, days of observation when I'm scheduling meetings and things of that nature. But being open to that criticism being open to learn every day. So I wouldn't necessarily call it criticism. To me, I thrive on it. Teach me more about you. So I am growing in my role, and I know the norm moving forward for various sectors.
Thanks, Tamika. Yes, the value of thick skin or not taking things personally is something you can develop over time, so you don't feel like it's you as a person. But feedback can help us all grow. Nina, and then Anise, I'll come back. I saw your hand, but then it disappeared. Did you want to add something before we go to Nina?
Tamika really hit it on the nose. So I put my hand down. But yeah, I think even more to the point of not taking kindness for weakness. It's kind of, in a leader, in my experience, I've always really appreciated the leaders and respected that kind of balance that I didn't want to see the other side, right? Like I want a kind and approachable leader, and I wouldn't want them to feel taken advantage of, or I want to continue to have that kind of relationship. So I think that there is a level of respect that garners, and in order to kind of keep that balance and keep that respect, there also is a balance that leader has to maintain of respecting their own kindness, that I and their boundaries, and holding those boundaries of like, I'm kind, but I will not be taken advantage of, and I think that also goes to culture, and that's a part of kind of the environment and the culture that you create. Like, it's known, right? You start working with or for somebody, and like, they're great. Let's not change that. We like this environment. Let's respect that, and let's all contribute to keeping that the way it is. So that's all I'd add.
Great, thanks, Anise. Now, Nina, you did the same thing, so now I'm going to call on you.
I wanted to make sure that she had an opportunity. Thank you. So I was going to say along those lines as well, but I remember earlier in the year, we talked about connecting with a tribe in a way that was able to make those connections that allowed you to then break through other guarded scenarios and connections. And I think this speaks to that, because, and I like to look at, we all have our own way, but I feel like a sense of humor and a sense of kind of being able to even, I don't say poke fun at yourself, but I know for me as a teacher, my students listen best when I tell them stories about how crazy my house is or about my kids or about my family. And I feel like all of a sudden the kids are wanting to ask a million questions, and probably because we're off task, but also I think it's because they feel that they found a window into me. And I feel like that connection immediately allows them to feel comfortable to be themselves. And I feel like when, from like an anthropological standpoint, if you talk about being a leader by connection, how do you connect is by that tribal way. And I think people will naturally feel safe to be themselves when you form those connections with them. I think it works wonders. Just having that kind of ability to relax and be anecdotal seems to be successful in fostering those connections.
Yes, leaders and teachers are people too. Derek, go ahead.
I just live in my box and come out and teach and go back to my box.
You're still in your box. What people have said really resonates, because when we do DEI work, the moment we register a complaint is registered, it's hard not to personalize it. Oh, so you call me a racist? Are you saying I'm phobic? Like, these things hit close to home when we're talking about DEI issues. And if we're talking about making change or systemic change and addressing things that are beneath the surface or systemic and that we want to look at, it's how we frame the debate will definitely get a response. If we're issue-based in our complaints and we're saying that these are the issues that we need to deal with, hopefully we can get people to stay focused on the issues instead of personalizing or criticizing people or name calling and moving into that place that will make people more defensive than collaborative. I think the students are leading us in this area in a lot of ways. In the student forums, the students would say, I have a hard time correcting my friends on some of these issues because I don't want them not to like me or me to feel like I'm not part of the group, not part of the tribe that Nina was talking about. So they're developing relationships and we're developing work relationships And when people are offering feedback or some type of making a complaint or criticism, people don't necessarily want to rock the boat. But DEI work requires us to bring issues to the fore that people may or may not be eager to want to address. So we're constantly trying to manage how we approach people in order to make sure that we stay issue focused and that it doesn't degenerate into criticism and blaming and holding people accountable. Because when it goes that route, people get defensive and it's hard to make any headway.
Thanks, Derek. You know, in thinking about our conversation tonight, I was looking at the list of qualities and characteristics of a leader that they shared in this article connected to, you know, it's in their diversity and inclusion theme that the Harvard Business Review does. So I feel sometimes that outside of a diversity and inclusive conversation, that those qualities and characters of a good leader might be defined differently. So I just Googled and let AI do the work for me to see, like, just in general, what are the qualities and characteristics out there in the greater ethos, not necessarily in the DEI world, came up. And I just want to share with you the list of what makes a good leader in this, using this, and then what makes a terrible leader. So I'll do the positive ones first, but there were 2, 4, 7 things that came up. Number 1 was integrity. Number 2 was resilience. I think this gets to what Tamika was talking about. Number 3 was confidence. 4 was self-awareness. I think this is what Shreya was talking about. 5 was creativity. 6 was Nina's, active listening. And the 7th one was positivity. And they surprised me because I thought it was going to be a lot more of a traditional, what's a strong leader look like? You know, charismatic, you know, all the words that we have associated with quote unquote strong leadership. And it wasn't that. Just wondering what the group thinks about that before I share the list of terrible qualities and characteristics. Any thoughts about that? Go ahead, Felicia.
I think the list is interesting because with the second article, one of the main things it highlights too is a leader who is willing to learn and educate themselves on different manners. So I think that kind of goes along with that confidence and creativity, positivity, all of that goes back to being that lifelong learner.
Yes, that's great. I mean, I guess one of the other things could be leaders know everything. That's, you know, not, of course, true at all. But to your point, Felicia, leaders are willing to realize they got things to learn all the time. Any other thought? Oh, go ahead, Derek.
I thought they would be mentioning something about being skilled at conflict management, getting people to talk to one another and to be able to be okay with difference. I think one of the most difficult things in a group, especially when you're dealing with controversial topics, is getting people to be okay with having a different point of view and still working together because they share common values. And I don't know if we always get to that point. You know, the conflict can weigh us down a bit. Yes,
yes. Well, that's an interesting segue. Let me read you the handful of things that AI said make for, the title was Traits of a Bad Leader. And number 1 was too bossy. Number 2 was fearful of change. Third was unwilling or unable to communicate effectively. This next one is kind of related to what Derek was just saying. Dismissive of ideas other than their own. Lacking empathy was next. Inconsistent was next. And then the last one was prone to blame others rather than accept responsibility for when things go wrong. So I don't know, any thoughts on that list and how they might relate to the work that we're trying to do? Nina.
I hear one theme throughout every single one of those, and that's fear, and how, you know, allowing fear to take over instead of, you know, feeling that you can trust the people that you are a leader of. And I feel like trust is a big part of DEI, and awareness and understanding factors into that. So I think that learning how to put down any kind of mechanisms or guard that people put up, I think is what happens in those situations. Those, you know, because I feel like that's a typical human response in fear. And when you have a leader like that, that's usually where that's stemming from.
Very interesting. Yes. Go ahead, Tamika.
Yeah, not necessarily an opinion, but more or less a funny remark. I just saw a bunch of ex-bosses flash through my mind when you were reading that. You saw me nodding. But that is true, right? And communication is a big one, right? And so if we're not communicating properly with one another and we're not taking others' ideas, expressions, anything into consideration. This is why we look at, you know, some of the work that we do in the public health sector. Are they increasingly high turnover rates, right? When you look across local public health departments or things of that nature, is the lack of respect for those real boots on the ground workers that are working with everyday people. You know, the more they advocate for themselves, the more they advocate for pay, the more they advocate for respect and protection, the less they're heard. And so you have the high turnover rate. So if you want to have a strong, robust team that sticks with you from A through Z, communication and respect, as well as seeing them all as leaders and having them contribute in, you know, in the areas that they're strong at contributing to, not just keeping them within their specific job description, but recognizing their abilities as well as their talents. This is where you really start to keep people engaged, including students and teachers that are looking for that that reassurance and need that also provides a safe space and trust and builds on a cohesive community. So, yeah.
Derek, I see your hand, but I want to circle back to Tamika for a second, because one of the things I think it's important for us to talk about is, you know, this group, this DEI group, is a group of leaders trying to help shape the climate and culture of our school community. And I guess I'll ask the question, are there things that we could be doing to help you in that leadership role? Are there things that you need? Or are there suggestions for how we might, you know, help people develop these kind of qualities and characteristics in order to lead the group, to lead this work? So, you know, what can we do to make the leading of this work better, easier, more effective for you? Because it is hard. You know, it is hard when issues come up. The conversations are always difficult. Derek, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to go to Shaka first. Go ahead, Shaka.
I hope you were looking for an answer to that question.
Well, yes.
I would say for myself, something that I found difficult rounding my second year is like we were just talking about, the boots on the ground, you know, kind of where we're making decisions, you know, kind of separate from that. You know, like I see what goes on in my daughter's school, you know, and I only have one view of that, you know. Like I think it would be good, like when Derek was talking about, you know, some of the things that were going on and there were going to be chaperones and things like that. And I'm like, man, I would love to go to something like that and really see, you know, our kids, you know, participating in those activities and being part of those like boots on the ground type activities. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, and there's really no reason why that couldn't happen, Shaka. We just have to coordinate, make sure you know about things, and we could do some invitations if you want to see DEI in action and not just hear about DEI in action.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Derek, go ahead.
Okay. The thing that stuck out to me on the list was blaming, because I think one of people, when you start pointing the finger and holding, we call it holding people accountable, but what it really does is put all the responsibility on a person so that we can not abdicate responsibility or accountability. But a lot of times when we look toward leadership, we look for the leader to blame somebody and to hold somebody accountable. And you could see it in when we talked about bullying. A lot of the responses were to have stronger rules and harder discipline, as if that's going to solve the problem of bullying. And it doesn't really do that. And blaming isn't really going to answer the question. It's that shared accountability. And like you said, diffusing the leadership, that we're all leaders and we all can take responsibility for creating the culture that we want to see and creating the outcomes we want to be. But when blaming comes up, that people are abdicating leadership and they're deferring and want to put that on somebody's head. So minimizing the blame game usually encourages, is definitely a sign of poor leadership, but it definitely encourages people to not take accountability.
Thanks, Derek. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, what I was going to say, it kind of builds on what Derek was going to say, and it's just, there's two direct, I can't answer the question of what would help Derek do his job, but what I can.
You too, Mike. All of us.
What I can say is I've been with Derek a lot, and I've seen, there's a couple of things that I think he does extremely well that relate to what we've been talking about in the article as well. Is number one, I think he just acknowledges to the people participating in the conversation that we're talking about things that are uncomfortable, and just acknowledging that uncomfortableness and that's part of the process, I think sometimes helps ease some of the anxiety that's in the room when we're talking about issues. But the other part about it too is exactly to what Derek just talked about, and I've seen him do this, is that there's a responsibility of everybody to participate in this process and be change agents to help get there. And it's not just about pointing out the things that are wrong, but it's also how are you going to be active in making the changes. And in our forums, we've had those discussions, and I know he's had those discussions in the Student Voice Committee too. So I think those are two really good things to help make change and help everybody feel empowered to make those changes.
Great, Mike. Those are great points. Go ahead, Leah.
Yeah, thanks. So it reminds me, I actually shared this poem with a teacher and one of the assistant principals, and then with Derek actually today. Adrienne Marie Brown is a writer, an activist, and so she wrote this, and I really feel like it's connected now to what we're talking about. She writes, "Small is good, small is all. The large is a reflection of the small. Change is constant, be like water. There was always enough time for the right work. There's a conversation in the room that only these people of the moment can have. Find it. Never a failure, always a lesson. Trust the people. If you trust the people, they become trustworthy. Move at the speed of trust. Focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build the resistance by building the relationships. Less prep, more presence, what you pay attention to grows. And I feel like with this space, you've provided a place for us to grow. So even if we might feel and we see like the results of the climate survey and, you know, it can feel like there's not enough being done, we are taking those steps. And I think, you know, I think they're important, and we do have to move at the speed of trust. And I think, you know, every day and every year we're getting more of that. Well, I hope at least.
Yeah, that is an excellent line. Move at the speed of trust.
Mm-hmm.
Use that somewhere. Thank you. Are there things we can do to help this group, this DEI group, and all the various hats that you wear, feel more empowered to do the work, to lead the work in your own worlds? Denise.
I think Shaka really just already said this pretty much, but more opportunity or more kind of outreach, just keeping us engaged in the school, opportunities to come to forums, or so that, yeah, just we are present in the work, and we, you know, as members of the committee are there. I would absolutely be able to find time to be more a part of like what's happening in the school, with just some suggestions, some, you know, I think active like suggestions would be helpful.
You know, I'm thinking, and go ahead, Leah, because I think you're going to say what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. Well, because I know,
We'll see.
Derek, I was driving while you were mentioning a couple of things that are happening. And so there are a couple of things, like there's actually something called World Read Aloud Day, and authors from all over across the country donate their time to join classrooms virtually. And so I've secured a couple of authors, actually 3 that day. And I have a, you know, neurodiverse author and a Jewish author and a Muslim author coming in like virtually. And so, and I know one of them is actually coming to Felicia's class. And so, Felicia, if it's okay, like inviting people, but we can give you some information about, you know, the times. And, you know, if you'd like to join during those times, and they're really amazing. And we did have Darshana Kotwal come in during Feminist Club. We actually had this past Tuesday, Shreya was there, or Monday, and we had past officers who graduated and came back for that. So I think, you know, if there are things happening, maybe there could be, I remember last year I had a calendar with the communications team, and maybe we can kind of create a calendar of things coming up. So then you're, you know what's happening, because we usually have things sort of planned. And if it works for your schedules, I don't know, then as far as coming into the schools, you know, what the process is for visitors. Maybe Marie and Mike could answer those questions.
Yes, we do welcome visitors. So we just need to plan ahead and know people are coming. And it would certainly work. I think that, and that's the idea, the general idea I had was let's invite people to things, but you knew exactly what things to invite them to, Leah. So thank you. Go ahead, Tamika.
Yeah, I just have to say kudos to Leah for really, I'm all about poetry. I used to write poetry, but what you said was, it hit the nail on the head. Just having this platform for us to be able to have the learning corners, understand, grow. You know, we have these special segments, and I think it's showing growth among us all as committee members, but also making sure that we're bringing it into either our workspaces and or into our homes and teaching our children. I know I just got my daughter to join the DEI committee at Farnsworth, and she's like, I got it, Mom, I'm on it. I'm totally there. And so just that encouragement in your own small ecosystem as well, The other thing is I wanted to mention, what you were, asking what you can do, but what we can do in order to really, push the DEI work that we're doing is making others aware, right? So I know I had the opportunity recently to go read at my son's classroom, and this was in second grade. This was last year. And I decided that I was going to introduce the classroom to our culture, right? Our language. And so I chose a bilingual book, a Spanish book, one of my son's favorite authors, who actually visited the school and chose him as a model to draw, and he illustrated my son in the book. And I taught the class, in addition to reading the book, I taught them a few phrases in Spanish and had them repeat. And I used that time. One of the greatest opportunities before the pandemic, and I don't know if the school district still does this, that I had was you guys used to partner with the Junior Achievement Program. I don't know if that's still a thing. And I don't know if they have courses now on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that would be something to look into as to whether or not they have small there. And there was like, I think I taught economics for third graders in through the Junior Achievement Program. I taught my daughter's class. It was like a month-long session. I went once or twice a week, and it was amazing. But they put together the curriculum for you, and you have a parent or someone volunteer from the community that comes in and actually teaches. But they have, and when I visited their website last, they have an enormous amount of topics or curriculums to choose from. So it might be someone to look into partnering with as well if we want to keep our parents or our community engaged what's going on in the school district. And it's a way for kids to get a break of their routine educators and have someone else come in. I know the kids absolutely, they're like, Mrs. Robinson, it even came with a rap song, and I made it rain with dollars at the end, and the kids went wild because I was able to throw my own spin. And I'm not an educator, but I had a ton of fun. And so these are some of the things that really help to that form that collaboration between students, educators, and the community. And I think that's another great suggestion. So we can all be involved again if we're talking about the subject of leadership.
Thanks, Tamika. That's great. Go ahead, Leah.
I was going to say, I feel like Derek and we actually met with Beth Martinez, who's on the DEI committee. Haven't seen her recently, but she met with us because she is part of the Educate to Empower. And I believe they actually do student training, if I'm correct, because we met maybe last month, right, Derek? They have like grades K-5 student training, grade 6-12 student training, and adult training. And part of that adult training, it was with educators, staff members, administrators, and or adult family members of young people in the district. So, that would probably be really great to connect with Beth because she's, part of our committee to maybe take a look at some of those.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Leah. Emma.
I think as a staff member, I think it'd be really cool to have more leadership roles inside of the school. Of course, I'm part of the building DEI committee, but there was one year where I was able to talk about the work we were doing with the new staff members at new staff orientation. And I felt like I had a really good role, like sharing information we're working on, promoting DEI, promoting teachers to join in on the work that we're doing. And I also find that I'm very curious about what's going on in the middle school and high school. And as an elementary teacher, I don't necessarily know. So a way for those who maybe are on this committee, who are staff members, to be able to get together and meet and talk and kind of share ideas and how we could spread some of the information that we're doing here into our schools and share with our staff. I try to share stuff during my building equity meetings, but I would love to be able to share more and work with a wider range of staff members throughout the district.
That's great. And just earlier this week, Rachel Anderson, who's our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, was talking about our conference day in March and the possibility, Mike, I'm not sure if you know this, of having our entire K-12 staff at the high school for the conference day so that we can more easily create the space and the circumstances where we can get cross-building, cross-level communication, collaboration, sharing of ideas and such. And I know she's looking for presenters. So there you go. That's a leadership opportunity.
If I had a buddy, I would do it.
I bet you can find a buddy. Other thoughts or observations about either of the articles that you think are worthwhile to bring to the group? Ria, can I put you on the spot a little bit? You recommended these articles. Was there anything in them that we didn't talk about that drew you to them to suggest them for us?
I think the second article, there was like a mention of like different characteristics that leaders normally have. And one of them was like humility. And I think that really stuck out to me. And I remember we talked about it in the meeting, about like how when we kind of typically think about a leader, we don't necessarily think of them as like what we talked about, like kind, empathetic. We kind of think of them as like stoic and like hard and just kind of empowering. And so I think when I like picked the articles, I feel like when I read it over, I think these kind of things that we normally don't think of in like the stereotypical version of a leader was something that stuck out to me when I picked them, and like when I was reading them over. So yeah.
Great, that's great. Yes, humility is, we learn it every day. Awesome. Anyone else with any final, go ahead, Nina.
I think along those lines, it makes me think of Martin Luther King Jr., right? The date coming up soon, and how he really exemplified those qualities, and being able to show that he was human and he was doing what he could for the greater good and the common good. And I think that it's a really neat way to circle back to when I think of a leader. He definitely is the forefront of my mind, and definitely showed that he wasn't perfect and that he was willing to try things and be brave, but also listen and be compassionate. So I feel like that the timing of that is pretty apropos as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Nina. Anyone else? Anise?
I just have something that came to mind literally all the way from the beginning of our meeting. I've just been waiting for like, when is the right time? So whenever it feels like the right time, feels like we're coming to the end. Just wanted to let me know. Do you think, can I bring it up now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I actually, when you were talking about your discussion in your subcommittee meeting last week, I wanted to know more about kind of where your conversation went. You were talking about the particular comment made by the white boy who was feeling excluded, left out in the DEI topic. And I just wonder, what was the direction your conversation went and how to address that in kind of the bigger picture of things?
Well, we talked a lot about the potential that many may not understand what DEI actually is. And Tara, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something I thought was really important when you said being a teacher and teaching is DEI, because you're thinking about meeting the needs of every single one of those children in your classroom, regardless of what they look like, what they believe, what language they speak as their first language, what their economic status is, all those things. So I don't know, let me stop there and let you weigh in, because you introduced that topic for our committee.
So, well, first, we did talk about clearly, I mean, nobody should feel left out. That's the bottom line. Like, this child isn't left out because of DEI. This child is being left out for another reason. And I said, when we talk about DEI, like everything I do, you want to be inclusive. You have to be diverse because you have all these different learners, and it's equity, giving each child what they need. So if there's a child, and he says, as a white male, I'm feeling left out because of DEI, and it's like, no, that's not the reason you're being left out. And I feel bad. I want to ask him more questions and say, well, what was the conversation happening? Why do you feel left out? Are you shy? Are you like, there just seems to be a lot more questions. And then I always go back to, we need to explain what is DEI and what DEI is not. And DEI is not about excluding anybody. Everyone should feel welcome. So that's kind of like where I was coming from. And that was my only thing, is just, and I was a teacher for 31 years, and you always think about making sure everybody's feeling included, and feeling heard and feeling valued. So I don't know. I guess I just have a lot of questions for that student, a lot more questions for that student. Like, why is he feeling this way? But that's kind of like what my thought process was.
And I'll just point out before I call on Felicia and Shreya that Tara is a master of having each and every child included. Truly, really, when Tara retired, we lost someone with a real gift for making everyone feel like they're a big part. And I'm not just saying that, Tara.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Thank you.
It's just true. Felicia.
Yeah, I think a part of the conversation that was really brought up too by our student leader in our group was that there were, in her situation, she had overheard a kiddo say that he didn't have a culture. And so they were doing a project and you had to do it based on your culture. And so he was, a white male, and no one really had an answer for him. So we kind of discussed that. And what did that look like? Well, you do have a culture. Everyone has one. It might not be something that you think DEI should be or what diversity should be, because, even just identifying as an American, you have an American culture. And so sometimes I think when we focus on diversity, we kind of forget to mention, when we're saying all these different diversities and cultures and different things that, bring us together, we kind of forget, some of the cultures that some of our students identify with, that's like as, simple as American, because we all live here and we all kind of see that American culture already in our everyday lives. So just kind of reminding him that he does have a culture, he does have diversity in his life. It just doesn't look like everyone else's. And that's the whole point, to celebrate our differences and celebrate the similarities and use it to unite us instead of making us feel like we don't belong together, bringing us all together.
Thanks, Felicia. That was a great point from our committee meeting. Thank you for sharing that. Shreya.
I think a lot of students at our school feel the same way, that they aren't like unique enough or diverse enough because of their race or where they come from. And I think like this kind of reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend like a couple months ago. She was talking about like how at her lunch table she had a conversation with other friends about like how white people don't have culture, and she kind of saw that as her identity being ripped away, because she views herself as having culture coming from a strong Italian and Welsh background, and just because of her race, like people assumed that she didn't have any culture. And I don't know, like I think that's something that people should think about. Like this kind of goes back to the thing that I was talking about earlier. Like when you look at someone, you assume things about them, but you really shouldn't, because you don't know everything about them. And it can kind of really hurt someone at a deeper level, even like conflicting with the way they view about themselves. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Shreya, you're 100% right. You made a full circle there. That was beautiful. Anise.
I think there was, in everything that we've said, first I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to hear that your conversation immediately went to like that comment pointed out first and foremost, like an opportunity, like learning opportunity. Like they're they don't initially, first, like an opportunity to teach what is DEI and what is, what isn't it. And also, and then coming around to, what you said, Shreya, just the misconception of like what culture is, and just in general, so many of the terms that we use and so many of the issues and the things that we address in this work, you can very quickly find that a lot of it is linked to misconceptions, misunderstandings, and having these conversations really opens up like, well, what actually is culture? And that you will find that people will find, and this is something that Emma, you've said in our conversations in the research committee, of like focusing on people's differences, or finding like, differences in looking at that and talking about that. We find that there's actually similarities in our differences, right? And looking at people's different cultures, it's like, it's completely different from my culture, but we all have a very distinct culture, and that is our similarity, right? And that we have pride in our cultures and things like that. And that we can find connection in that rather than it being something that divides us. I was very curious to see, like, does it go there? Because something, a hazard that happens when this comes up is immediately, and this is in all of our conversations too, of kind of playing the blame or, getting really defensive, is that we, in order to make everybody feel included, when it's somebody who kind of identifies in the majority and not the minority says, now I feel left out, we then center that person again, or center that my majority kind of, again. And in doing that, are not addressing the issue at hand, right? And so I think it's important, and it's, being the leaders of this work for the district, that we really talk about kind of what are our strategies and what do we see and how do we kind of make everybody feel included, but recognize that maybe like inclusive isn't what you thought it was, like maybe in an equitable space, in a truly inclusive space, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always centered. Maybe there are some things to learn about being an inclusive member of a shared space. And this came up in our conversations, throughout the day. An inclusive environment, or being a good leader, also means like listening, right? And equity and being equitable means like being able to listen and not like always take up space and always be the biggest person and most important person in the room. So I think I was just curious to hear, did you look at that as like, well, there's something to learn about how to feel included.
Anissa, I'm so glad you brought that point back around from the beginning. It's really important. Tara, go ahead.
Shreya, I just wanted to thank you for that perspective, because I hadn't even thought about that. The child who's like Italian and Welsh and thinking that she didn't have a culture because she's white. And I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, I identify a lot with my Irish heritage. So I'm Irish American, very proud of that. And so that's a lot of my culture. But it's good. It's just a perspective I hadn't even thought about. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
I want to thank everybody. Everybody on this call had something to say about these articles. So thank you, Ria, for picking 2 winners here. We appreciate that. That's great. And so, Ria, I am going to send it back to you to kind of wrap us up for the evening.
Thank you. So if no one has any other questions or concerns, I kind of need a motion to adjourn the meeting for tonight. Mr. Westbrook and Shreya, thank you. Thank you, and I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening. Great job, Ria. We always appreciate it. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Great
night.
job.